Hey, it's Mazzy here, and this is the gospel according to rock and roll. This is a video I've been wanting to do in a while because there's a lot of records here in my collection and sort of a segment of music that is a very favorite of mine, is dear to my heart. And I got into this stuff, I guess, starting at around 14, 15 years old, 16 years old. And I've done videos on soul music, R&B music, blues music, blue-eyed soul music. And this, again, I hate to do all these segmented genre videos, but this is just really good music, and it's not a definitive list. As I unveil it to you and show these records, you kind of see where I'm coming from, and hopefully those of you who don't know this music might check it out. These are white artists that were heavily influenced by soul, R&B, and gospel singers and gospel musicians. Musicians like Sister Rosetta Tharpe, a great guitar and soulful gospel singer, Mahalia Jackson, obviously later on Aretha Franklin and Sam Cooke, and all these black artists that came from the church and crossed over to secular music, and then kind of held it onto the little bit of the God stuff and the Jesus stuff, and just that soul thing. And this isn't a video about Christian rock. That's not what I'm into. That's not what this is about. But and all these artists aren't necessarily believers, and I'm not even getting into that segment of it. I'm not getting into the specific religious side of it. But it all came about because of Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. The original Delaney and Bonnie. This album as sort of a starting point, and everything here works around this record. And this is a major, Delaney and Bonnie are major recording artists, actually from LA, but or starting in LA. And this was on Elektra Records, very important and a very driving force, and literally driving. This guy took control of everything he got involved with, and to the extent that he burned a lot of bridges and pissed a lot of people off. But this guy had a voice, had the chops. He influenced so many artists, and there's a handful of artists here that are directly sort of descendants of Delaney and Bonnie, and this album in particular, and then several others. On this is Jim Price, the great Bobby Whitlock, whose father was a preacher. I'm going to talk about him a little bit too. Great piano player, instrumentalist, guitar player, as well, great on the B3 organ. Bobby Keys, great horn player. Jim Keltner, of course, one of the great rock drummers. Carl Rattle, Leon Russell, and Rita Coolidge. We'll get into a little later also some other artists that they really pushed and were influenced by them. But this was a record that came out, I believe this is 1968 or 69, produced by Delaney, who was a great arranger, a great producer, very swampy R&B, gospel rock and roll. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. I love this record. This is a soulful masterpiece. I don't want to skip this record. This should have been included first, but this is their record Home. This is their debut record, and this was issued on Stax Record, recorded mostly at Stax Studios, and this is an amazing record. This, again, is on the Stax label. This was a CD reissued, and the album was reissued and pushed after their success at Elektra Records with Motel Shot. The records you'll see coming up in a moment here. But the backing band on this is mostly the house musicians from Stax Records, including Steve Cropper and Donald Duck Dunn and William Bell and Isaac Hayes. Incredible record, very gospel-y rock and roll record. So this is really the genesis. I jumped on when they were on Elektra Records, and that was the first record that I got into Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. But this is an important issue, and record I need to get on vinyl, but really, really good record. And that is Delaney's grandfather, and he was from Mississippi, and they're from Mississippi. The main record that branches out into a lot of records I'm showing here is this record. And this is Delaney and Bonnie and Friends on tour with Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton obviously got really tired of the psychedelic scene, and with Cream, played around, toyed around with Blind Faith. I could have shown Blind Faith, because Blind Faith actually had a very gospel-y religious sound with Stevie Winwood's organ playing In the Presence of the Lord, that sound. I didn't include that record here, but it would have been a good record to really kind of follow along here. Most of these records showing today are American artists, although they really influenced a handful of artists in the United Kingdom, because this kind of music was not happening there. This kind of gospel-y soul, R&B, drive and rock roll came out of the States, America, the South, the Midwest, even the West Coast. Incredible record. Bob Dylan, Barry Feinstein's photograph of Bob Dylan sitting in the Rolls Royce. Great live record. I think I want to show this too, because this was a Rhino handmade collection that came out some 20 years ago. There's smaller version of this, and this is the entire set of recordings from the tour. Incredible stuff. On the road, Eric Clapton joined them, and he just got entrenched in this music. Of course, as I said earlier, he left Cream partly because he heard this record. Music from Big Pink by the band. Of course, the band that would back up Bob Dylan, that Bob Dylan brought together, or that were the Hawks, and worked at Big Pink and wrote a lot of, collaborated with Dylan on what became the Basement Tapes recordings and so on. This is not a religious album, but there are overtones of that with songs like The Kingdom Come, the Robbie Robertson song, Tears of Rage, The Weight, We Can Talk, Long Black Veil, which is actually a cover, Chest Fever, This Wheel's on Fire, the Dylan and Rick Danko song, and I Shall Be Released, the Dylan song. So, Dylan overlaps in this story, in this collection of music. Obviously, the band were doing something on the East Coast totally different than what Delaney and Bonnie were doing on the West, throughout the South, and in the United Kingdom around 1969 and 1970. So this was recorded at the end of 1969, came out in 1970, and Eric Clapton joins on the tour. George Harrison joined, I think, 4 or 5 shows in the United Kingdom, and he was very influenced by this band, as was Dave Mason from Traffic, joined up and went on the road. So one of the most amazing rhythm sections, one of the tightest bands ever in rock and roll, and has that really great soul sound. And I would argue that on here, and a handful of these albums, the drummer is Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon is probably the best driving force drummer in rock and roll, in terms of he's got the greatest groove in rock and roll. Now, you go in the prog drummers and the technical jazz drummers and everything else that are syncopated and a whole different thing. But in terms of, if you want that driving groove, Jim Gordon was the guy in the early 70s, the mid 70s, and he's all over, his sticks and his sets are all over a lot of these records. But this is an incredible record. Now, a lot of this music also comes out of the whole Stax thing with Steve Cropper and Donald Duck Dunn and those great white soulful players that backed up Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin and all those great records at Stax Records in Memphis. So that's a real big part of this sound too. Amongst my favorite is this record. This is Motel Shot. This is Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. I've showcased this before. This has the sound and emulates live record on the road. Basically, the whole vision of this record was, the band, after they're doing their sets, they go back to the hotel, and they jam, they stay up all night doing whatever they do, and just loosely jamming, beating on a guitar case, and not full setup. The irony is that this was actually recorded in the living room of, I think, Bruce Botnick, who worked with the Doors, and his Hollywood LA living room that was set up as a studio, and that's where everyone recorded. And everyone from Graham Parsons to Leon Russell to Joe Cocker to Clarence White joined in on this record. Clarence White, one of my favorite guitar players, played with the Byrds later on. Early on comes from the bluegrass scene with the Kentucky Colonels, but love this record. So these 3 records, all the Delaney and Bonnie records are interesting, but these 3 records I showed are the sweet spot. And of course, as I said, the Delaney and Bonnie and Friends, what a great rock and roll record. This has an intense groove to it, one of the great all-time live records. And but this core band really blossomed and really brought together a lot of other artists. And obviously, we're coming up, or we just actually celebrated last year, the 50th anniversary of All Things Must Pass. There is a anniversary edition coming out, but that's not what this story is about. The core band of this, in a way, stems and comes out of the birth of the, I don't want to say rubble, because they were still in existence to some extent, of Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. And Eric Clapton, who would join up on the road, as I said, with Delaney and Bonnie and Friends, and Bobby Whitlock. Those are the 2 artists that were sort of the core band in this. They were the 2 musicians that George Harrison requested to pull a band together to make this record. And they didn't get everyone, but they pulled together the basic musicians. Obviously, Billy Preston's on here playing organ and piano. And Eric Clapton and Bobby Whitlock are doing a lot of the background vocals on this record and are all over this record, and really kind of are an important core of this record. So in a way, Delaney and Bonnie begat All Things Must Pass and begat this first solo album by Eric Clapton, the debut RSO record, Robert Stigwood Organization record by Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton had Delaney produce this record. He pulled, again, the whole band backing him up pretty much is a band that was Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. And on here, you got everyone on here. You got Eric Clapton, you got Rita Coolidge, Jim Price, Bobby Keys on horns, Bobby Whitlock, organ and vocals. You got Leon Russell, you got Sonny Curtis. You got Jim Gordon, again, that great driving force of a drummer. You have Bonnie Bramlett, of course, Delaney Bramlett, Carl Rattle, great bass player. And this is a great record. This is where they bring in a song from J.J. Cale, the Oklahomian writer and guitar player that really soothes sound, that I think J.J. Cale probably made more money off Eric Clapton than he did. He wrote After Midnight, which is on this record. He wrote Cocaine. He wrote Call Me the Breeze, that Leonard Skinner did. And I'll mention him a little later also. But this is a great, funky, soulful record. I think there is a CD. There's 2 versions of this that I think one is the Delaney Bramlett mix, and there's a Tom Dowd mix, I guess. Fantastic record, soulful record. Clapton is on fire, but he's not on fire like the psychedelic guitar wizard. There's horns, it's soulful. Again, it takes on the Delaney and Bonnie funky soul thing and makes it a great record. To me, this is Eric Clapton's best solo record, maybe not his most famous. Obviously later, he sort of took a back seat on the guitar playing when he got into records like Slow Hand and 461 Ocean Boulevard, which are fine records. I don't diss them, but this record really has the soul I think Eric Clapton was looking for to get away from the Cream and the guitar god, Eric Clapton is God thing going on. Fantastic record here. Just a wonderful piece of work. Of course, also you got Slunky, which is this great instrumental opener. You got After Midnight, the J.J. Cale song, Blues Power, a song that Leon Russell brought to the mix here. Bottle of Red Wine, which is a co-song by Bramlett and Clapton, and Let It Rain. Let It Rain also was a lovely hit, a big FM staple when this album came out, co-written by Clapton and Delaney Bramlett. Fantastic album. And of course, that leads into this. Derek and the Dominos, Layla. Not going to get into the whole big story of this, but what a band. This could have been one of the greatest bands in rock and roll, but they burn brightly, for a very short time, made only one studio record. This is an extension of that Eric Clapton record. This is an extension of All Things Must Pass. This is an extension of Delaney and Bonnie and Friends pulling this band together. And this is Eric Clapton, Bobby Whitlock, Carl Rattle on bass. Duane Allman plays on some of the cuts, obviously that great intro to Layla. And Jim Gordon. You should seek out them live on the Johnny Cash show. They're just fantastic. Tempestuous Time, songs written by Eric Clapton, songs written by Bobby Whitlock, songs co-written by the two of them. Bell Bottom Blues co-written by Bobby Whitlock and Eric Clapton. And even if you don't know Whitlock's voice, he's all over this. He sings some leads. In a way, their voices sort of overlap in a way that Clapton and Bobby Whitlock have similar intonations a little bit. But what great songs. And the harmonies, again, Bobby Whitlock comes from the gospel, comes from the preacher, a son of a preacher, has that just soulful sound of a singer, and incredible record. Irony is this wasn't a hit record when it came out. Layla got some mild airplay, but until the Eric Clapton double comp came out, is it The History of Eric Clapton or The Best of Eric Clapton, that twofer that came out, Layla finally caught on and became a hit after the fact, and then Bell Bottom Blues. And obviously then this album grew in stature. But then they did like one truncated tour, the live album, which is fantastic, and that was it. And I think Whitlock waited around in the UK for Clapton to come out of his drug stupor, and it never happened. This band should have continued, and unfortunately it didn't. But it comes from that really soulful, swampy rock and roll sound. But, soon after that, I think, what year was this? In 72 or 73 is this first Bobby Whitlock solo record. Really good record, obviously not as strong as Derek and the Dominos, but has a lot of players on here. And it's produced by Bobby Whitlock and Andy Johns for Jimmy Miller Productions. Jimmy Miller obviously worked with the Rolling Stones quite a bit. And Bobby Whitlock also played on Exile on Main Street, some keyboards on that record as well. But Bonnie Bramlett is on here, and Delaney and Bonnie, and a lot of the other same musicians that were on the other albums. But a great soulful, funky record. He made several records after this, but this is really a good kind of, again, an R&B gospel according to rock and roll. And coming out of this whole scene, again, going back to the band, I'm going back and forth, so this isn't like a scientific historical education in this music, but it's just some records I like. I talked about music from Big Pink. Again, the band aren't known for that swampiness in the same realm, in the same way as Delaney and Bonnie, but they have similar influences a little bit. Both, I think the band are less R&B, more rock and roll influence. But these two bands, this is their second album, just self-titled, the Brown Album, which I think is their best album they ever made. And of course, you got Across the Great Divide, Rag, Mama Rag, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Whispering Pines, Up on Cripple Creek, Jemiah Surrender, and on and on and on. A fantastic record, but it's got that little soulful feel that, it can be right in this gospel rock and roll wheelhouse, even though it doesn't praise Jesus and continue. And of course, even this wonderful live album, Rock of Ages, just sounds like something out of the church. And this was, I believe, a New Year's Eve concert with incredible horn arrangements by Alan Toussaint. And this is great. This is the band with a kind of New Orleans funky horn section to back them up. So it's got a funky 1972 feel to it. This is from New Year's Eve, 1972 to 1971, 1972. New Year's Eve shows, Rock of Ages, the band. Coming out of Oklahoma, and a musician that, went to LA, became a session musician, was part of the Wrecking Crew with his short hair, and that is Leon Russell. Leon Russell absolutely fits in this kind of soulful, gospel-y sound and really rockin' sound. This is his debut album, which was on Shelter Records. And what's great about this, or not great, but see this? I have several Shelter records. Look at the logos. This is not an original because the Shelter record originally had that logo, which is basically the S from Superman, and they had to like nix it because DC Comics sued them. So, cease and desist. So, A Song for You, Dixie Lullaby, Shoot Out the Plantation, Hummingbird. Delta Lady is like, to me, the hero of this song. Very upbeat, very, Leon Russell's got that church piano style that just can't be beat. I just love it to death. Really great. Roll Away the Stone, again, fantastic record. And of course, Leon Russell and the Shelter People, and this really has that sound, and everyone's on this record. Carl Rattle again on bass, Chuck Blackwell on drums, Claudia Lanier, the great soulful vocalist, and Kathy McDonald, who's got a great southern raspy vocal sound. Jesse Ed Davis, a great guitar player, Jim Keltner, David Hood and Barry Beckett, one of the great rhythm sections. Those two would go on tour with Traffic in 1973-74. I did see that tour with them where they got a little more jazzy, funky sound, Traffic with Stevie Winwood, that band. You got Jim Gordon again on drums, that really driving force again, the fantastic drummer, and Carl Rattle on bass. So you got the nucleus here of Derek and the Dominos and Delaney and Bonnie, the Ballad of Mad Dogs and Englishmen, a song he wrote that would be the title of a tour of the next record coming up. A great cover of It's a Hard Rain to Fall, Bob Dylan, Stranger in a Strange Land, Leon Russell, and a great cover here of Beware of Darkness, which he would do with George Harrison, a fantastic version of that at the concert for Bangladesh. This is a fantastic record, and Leon Russell's got that vocal, gospel-y, Oklahoma soul voice that just is incredible sound. A great artist. There was like about 4 or 5 years where every album of his, and he's played everywhere, and I saw him at the Berkeley Community Theater, I'd say around 72 or 73, and just a fantastic performer, fantastic musician. So this is a great record. And of course then, after Joe Cocker, I believe, did 3 studio albums, A&M had him put this tour together for Joe Cocker really fast. And they made a concert film. When you get a chance, see the concert film. It's fantastic. Joe Cocker, Mad Dogs and Englishmen, obviously named after the tour with Americans, and obviously Joe from the UK, and Chris Stainton, his guitar player from the UK, and a great gospel-y, this is like a rock and roll circus in a way. On the road, crazy overkill, 1 million performers, it seems like, that were on this stage. I think it almost, it lost so much money for A&M, they had to do a film and double record to recoup their investment, which did really well. This was a huge hit, and it's a fantastic record. And, on here there are covers of Feelin' All Right, the Dave Mason song that he wrote with Traffic, Cry Me a River, Bird on the Wire, the Leonard Cohen song, Superstar, Leon Russell song that Bonnie Bramlett on here co-wrote with, Bonnie Bramlett co-wrote with Leon Russell. But again, you got Jim Gordon on drums rocking this, and Jim Keltner. So you got these 2 drummers on here. You got percussion players, you got horn section, you got literally a choir. You got a friggin' choir. There's where the gospel stuff comes in. So this is soul, gospel, pop, a cover of Delta Lady, great song, the Leon Russell song, an amazing cover of The Letter, the Letter from By the Box Top, and a song that was sort of resurrected by Joe Cocker. Fantastic movie, fantastic gospel rock and roll record on tour. And this one is more secular. It's not very religious at all, but I bring it in because it still has that mood. And again, from Oklahoma is J.J. Cale. This is his debut album, Naturally, which just has this easy, soulful sound, of course, influencing Eric Clapton and Eric Clapton covering After Midnight, which is on this record. You got Crazy Mama, Call Me the Breeze. Obviously, as I said, that was recorded by Leonard Skinner, and Magnolia. This is a gorgeous record. This is an intimate record. This, in a way, could be considered gospel-y, intimate rock and roll, bluesy, soulful. Just his, it's got the right grooves to it, I think, and it's a fantastic, fantastic record. Again, this was on Shelter Records too. So J.J. Cale. I'm throwing these two in because, again, when I said on Layla, that great lead guitar part was Duane Allman. What an incredible lead. What an incredible artist, and died way too young. But the first two, I believe these are the first two Allman Brothers records. I never show Allman Brothers records, and these two records are fantastic. Of course, Southern rock at its finest. The Fillmore and Eat a Peach records are just sublime, perfect live rock and roll records. But Idlewild South and the Allman Brothers record are just fantastic records. You got Revival, Midnight Rider, In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, Hoochie Coochie Man. So it's like the blues rock and roll, but there's gospel all written in here in a different way. Again, not religious, more secular, but look at that. I mean, come on. If Dwayne doesn't look like, well, that's not Dwayne, but he doesn't look like Jesus in that shot, I don't know what does. But then you got like the Naked Boys, like, you know, what can I say? Naked Almonds and Oakleys and the like. Both these records are perfect records. It's Not My Cross to Bear, the great Allman song. Hungry, Every Hungry Woman Dreams, and of course, the great anthem of a generation, Whipping Post, Allman Brothers. Now, I'm getting off track a little bit, but I'd be remiss if I didn't show this album. Obviously, it's not a rock and roll gospel album, but in a way, I'm saying it is. It's John Lennon's Plastic Ono Band, is obviously his first musical solo record from 1970. The song God Alone, if you've heard the reissue, the expanded box set with the way he's working the song out, starting as a folk song, but he even talks about he wants this gospel piano in that. So he finally brings in Billy Preston, who adds that incredible gospel piano sound on this record. I just love it. And this is him, like, you know, for his God, for his drug, for his woman, for his moment, for his life, a rebirth in a way. John Lennon, like, exposing himself like no rock star had ever done up to this point. Incredible record, intimate record, raw record, and I would say it's John Lennon's gospel record, because I say so. So then you get into, you know, country music, and I'm not showing R&B, I'm not showing country here, but the crossover of these two Flying Burrito Brothers records, obviously Graham Parsons and Chris Etheridge and Chris Hillman and Sneaky Pete, great record, and same with this. So you got country rock, the initial country rock, obviously after, you know, I could have put the Sweetheart of the Rodeo might have been good because of all the Louvin Brothers songs, and that is such a religious, you know, crossover of a song, gospel, rock and roll also. But both these records, I think, should be in this thing. And again, I don't have it here showcasing it, but Sweetheart of the Rodeo by the Byrds. But I did pull two Byrds records for this video because of a couple songs. Their cover here of the great song, I think they did the first version of it, Jesus Is Just All Right, and Glory, Glory on here. Of course, Roger Jim McGuinn, Christian follower, had some religious overtones, but didn't pontificate on it, didn't spew it, or didn't proselytize it and try to bring people into the fold. But the Byrds, at this period in their career, had some of that country crossover, gospel-y rock and roll period. And then, of course, I'd be remiss since I'm going in that direction, Graham Parsons' second solo album, Grievous Angel. I mean, posthumous record that is right in there. So that's my video on the gospel according to rock and roll. And I'm going to end with Bob Dylan. Slow Train Coming, his 3-year tour of Christianity. and the best out of the 3 albums. Fantastic record, intimate record, Jesus record, beautifully recorded. Barry Beckett's on it. Jerry Wexler produced it, and it's one of his better records. Some people got turned off at the time by it, but it's held up, and it's a strong offering by Bob Dylan. So this is Mazzy here, showcasing the gospel according to rock and roll for you, for me, and for all of us. Mazzy loves you.